So, today we're going to talk about talent management and AI, less about the systems and technological side of it, and more about how our approaches to talent management might change. And this is the HR Hub. Keep listening to learn about this topic and anything related to HR. You can also find me on YouTube. So, today I'm excited to have Dr. Reece Akhtar. He's an organizational psychologist and the CEO at Deeper Signals. He specializes in talent assessment, leadership, and computational psychometrics. He teaches at NYU and is a regular contributor to Forbes and the Harvard Business Review. Hi, Reece. How are you?
Hey, Andrea. Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. And I'm really interested in this topic. And I think we might all be getting tired of all this conversation about AI, but I think it's so important for us to stay on top of it. But before we get to talking about the AI part of it, how do you define talent management? Because I find with my guests that we're kind of all over the map. So when you think about, how we regularly, categorize the activities of HR, what does that encompass? It's recruitment, obviously.
Yeah, so it's everything about how are you supporting or staffing your organization so that it has the skills, expertise, and capabilities to execute on its vision, right? So it's around recruitment. So how are you identifying and attracting talent? And then, how do you then make some decisions about people that are applying it, who is going to be the best fit? What does fit look like? What are the skills required? Then it is around kind of onboarding. How do we kind of help people be successful in their new roles? It goes everything across learning and development from individual contributors to team effectiveness to leadership development. And then also at a more higher level, you start to think about workforce planning and succession planning. And that's probably where, talent management has a lot of activity around, or more traditionally, let's say, because, the outsized impact of leaders on an organization. So think of it like the entire journey of an individual through the organization. How do we support them at every step of the way so that they're able to do their best work and it's serving the current and future needs of the organization?
Hmm. I'm thinking that that's pretty much a lot of HR.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I think it's like, taking uh, out the comp and ben and the payroll and kind of the more administrative side of HR, and
like,
you're just focusing just on the people side of things and how you are aligning individuals with the role demands.
Okay, so AI is going to have an impact. Like that's a lot of stuff. The AI is going to have an impact in many ways. How do you think about the main impacts that AI is going to have on this whole broad system of talent management?
Yeah, I think there's two ways it will go, and both will be in parallel. It will be neither dystopia or utopia. I think you will see organizations use AI as a kind of race to the bottom to replace, automate, remove certain roles or tasks out of the hands of humans into AI. And you can argue that should be done because these things are highly repetitive and boring and not that engaging or prone to mistakes. And so machines can do that job well. But then as well, there's the opportunity to use AI to actually augment a decision making, to support a development, to help us become, more informed, more understanding, better professionals. I think the trick is making sure that we're doing both of those things right, and it's a careful balance. You could go too far, and it's a race to the bottom, and you just view your entire workforce as a commodity that needs to be outsourced to machines. Um, and vice versa. It'll be short sighted to not introduce AI into the workflow because it's a great resource for kind of thinking differently or making your work more efficient. And so there I feel really excited, which is rather than just removing people from your workforce and replacing it with AI, what kind of impact or outcomes could you have if everyone was given, an access to a large language model that they can use to help them be more efficient, more effective, more creative, whatever it may be? What kind of impact and value can you start to deliver for your stakeholders. I think that is really, really interesting and worth thinking about, not just going down the commodification road, which is probably more attractive to kind of short term thinking.
Yeah. I really hear that, it could go one way or the other. I mean, even on the show, I mean, I have people saying, "Well, we think that it's gonna take 30% away of the tasks, but you still have that 70%, and how do you make those 2 work together better?" But then I hear business leaders actually saying, "Oh, good, I get to get rid of people, and I'm gonna make even more money." Um, where do you think it's gonna go?
It's going to be both of those things. I think, like, depending on how I feel in the morning, it depends how cynical I'm feeling. And I think both of those things are going to be true. And we already see that actually happening now, right? There's organizations which have completely downsized and tried to replace them with AI, and that's had mixed success. I also know many organizations that are leaning into it as another tool and a way to help their people get better. I think it's conducive to the the media cycle and kind of everything that feeds off of that. To talk about AI and its impact through just extremes only. It's either going to save us or it's going to doom us. And the reality is, like, things are more boring than we would like, right? You look at history, and technology never really plays out the ways that you think it does, and
Yeah.
the impacts that it has is never as big nor as small as you would otherwise predict. So ultimately, the future is unknown, and we can't really predict what the world is going to look like in 10 years, in kind of how sophisticated AI will or not be. But I think, the idea is, like, one, AI is here to stay. It's already having an impact, and that's not going to go. But I think the opportunity for business leaders is, like, one, understanding where AI edges are and thinking about how to incorporate that. But then two, it's about doubling down on the things that don't change. And what doesn't change is people and their creativity, their emotional intelligence, their motivation to overcome and work towards hard things. Those things are always true, always have been in human history and continue to will be. So why don't we focus on those things as well? Strengthening our culture, strengthen our leaders, strengthen our teams. And then, AI is just another tool on top of that.
So from your vantage point, and I think Deeper Signals, your company has something to do with AI, and you'll have an opportunity to talk about that. But um, how do you see the impact that AI is having on our soft skills versus our technical skills?
Yeah, I think, like, there is a very real risk and kind of outcome whereby the half life of kind of knowledge or technical skills is being significantly impacted by AI. Um, and that is, you know, in some industries or some roles more than others. And so I think there is kind of a skewed distribution of kind of what technical skills are being impacted, but all of them will be to a greater or lesser extent. But then as well, I think, it actually increases the importance of, quote unquote, soft skills.
Mhm.
Our ability to communicate is going to become more important. Our ability to come up and engage with critical thinking and good questions is going to be more important to ask of the AI. And as you can kind of see, we look at kind of, say, the industrial revolution, that mechanized kind of a lot of college labor, college industries. And, you're going to start to see that happening with kind of AI is mechanizing more intellectual capital. And so what that means is our social capital is going to become more important. So we're going to shift even further towards kind of coordinating work and less about kind of doing the work. But of course, this is going to be uh, not normally distributed. What's the phrase? Like, the future's here, but it's not normally distributed. I think it's going to be the same with the impacts of AI. I think it's those people that stand to financially benefit from saying AI is going to transform every single part of society. They 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 either run one of these companies, and they're going to get really rich from doing that, and so it's important for them to peddle that. But I think, do you really think uh, every single role is going to get automated away? Of course not. Of course not. And if that does happen, then what does that mean for society? How do we actually restructure society in a way to accommodate that, right? Which,
Well,
I
yeah.
feel like isn't exactly right. Then you have to start to think about UBI and so on and so forth. And so, that just feels like so far away. Um,
If we all lose our jobs if we all lose our jobs, all these people who are trying to get rich off of AI are gonna have no one to sell their stuff to.
yeah, precisely.
So what skills should we be including in our hiring now as AI gains more and more traction?
Yeah, I would say it is continue to have good interpersonal skills. So, are you rewarding to work with? Are you open to feedback? Are you sensitive and show concern for the needs and feelings of others? Are you able to regulate and manage your own emotions? So, we can think of it broadly as like EQ. I think the other kind of competency or domain will be around kind of critical thinking, curiosity, um, the ability to kind of be agile and learn new things and adjust to change. And then finally, it's about being highly motivated and willing to kind of apply yourself to grow, to learn, to develop, to persist and achieve your goals, right? And I think, these three things um, have always been important. And, there's tons of psychological literature showing that no matter how you or what label you prescribe to these three broad buckets of talent, it correlates with, on the job performance, whether you're a senior leader or an individual contributor. Um, and so those things I think will always be important. They're kind of evergreen qualities. Um, and what's going to change is kind of how those things are manifested and kind of how one applies those qualities using, the new tools and technologies that they have access to.
Uh, so what are the most promising applications of AI, relative to talent management that you are seeing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think like what is not so interesting is using AI to kind of just make like determinations about someone's potential or not, but rather using AI so much. So like that's kind of on the prediction side of things. And
Okay.
like that seems pretty standard. But I think what's most interesting is using AI to kind of make sense of data, right? And so this is something that we've been doing at Deeper Signals and kind of what we're seeing out there in the market, whereby we've known within like the space of talent management, like we've known a lot about kind of the science of talent potential for a long time or leadership effectiveness. But accessing and using that data is quite difficult. It requires a lot of training. There's a lot of nuance. And so what we've been playing with at Deeper Signals and where I see kind of the market going is actually using AI to turn like data insights into some form of action or helping people understand individuals better, understand their candidates better, understand their teams better, rather than kind of having to do a lot of the laborious interpretation of complicated reports and so on. So it's really around making things more accessible, democratizing certain insights, lowering the barrier to entry, um, which then means, you start to engage your critical thinking and all of those things we just discussed, rather than just using AI systems to kind of automate away decisions. I think, there's value in some of that, but it also has, more potential for um, less desirable outcomes.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you have any examples of that though? Like to make this tangible to people, this how AI is actually working in specific cases around what you just described.
Not to be, I mean, this is promotional, but, it's just the
Y-
example that comes to mind.
You're embedded in it. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. We have an assessments platform, right? So companies tend to do the signals when they are looking to gather data about their candidate or employees or teams, soft skills to understand kind of how people are going to think, are they going to gel with other people on the team, how they're going to collaborate, et cetera, et cetera. And so the way that we do that is through using short scientific surveys, and then our platform generates all sorts of reports and insights. Now, traditionally, uh, to be able to make sense of those insights, you have to get trained up. You have to obviously have a lot of experience, kind of working in the talent management space, doing coaching, recruitment, whatever it may be. Uh, and that's a barrier to entry. It's a barrier to really getting the full value out of these types of scientific insights because there's only so many coaches or internal facilitators or recruiters in an organization that can make sense of it. And so what we're doing is using agentic AI to create a layer on top of that, whereby anyone can ask questions of the report. So from there, you can have employees who have taken an assessment and, the report's telling them, okay, you're fantastic at being agile, you're great decision makers, but actually you could improve how you're communicating and be a bit more sensitive, as an example. Okay. Now, before you would have to have a conversation with your manager who would give like a half-assed attempt, or you're lucky that you have access to a coach. Now with the AI, you could ask, okay,
Mm.
you've told me this thing I need to work on. Give me a development plan to kind of close that gap. Or if it's a new leader, I've assessed my team. What the hell do I do? How can I engage them properly? Again, now the AI can be there as a full partner to kind of help explain those results in ways that are more easily digested and actionable.
Uh,
So there, it's about giving. It's not about um, giving away kind of autonomy from employees and leaders to AI, but actually the opposite. It's about giving them more opportunities to make better decisions, to better understand themselves and each other, because the barriers to entry are significantly lower because of AI.
mhm. And it really, it empowers growth in those individuals. I have a quick question though about the AI. Like, what if I don't have any specific examples, but I do, a couple of these psychological assessments. But I want to know, like, what this means to some other category that may not have been assessed at all. Is the AI going to make up things?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a real concern, and I would say um, more is being done to. Well, okay, so I think like the early versions that we saw of like large language models, hallucination was everywhere.
They did it all the time.
Um, and what we have seen with each iteration, like the amount of hallucination does decrease. It's obviously still there. AI still makes mistakes, um, and can still make things up, but it's much easier to manage. It's much easier to put guardrails around these things than it was before. There's still a long road ahead, for sure, but it's getting better. And we are improving. But it's also worth kind of thinking about, humans make things up as well. Humans hallucinate all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
They call it different things. But, um, when I think about AI as a decision making tool, it just has to be better than kind of the current baseline of human decision making, which is under certain conditions can be pretty poor. And so that should be like the benchmark that we compare it against.
So if companies out there are like,
Mhm.
and HR departments are going, we need to invest in AI for our talent management cycle, and they probably have done nothing so far.
Mhm.
What do you suggest?
I think it's first off, it's like having a clear strategy around like what is it that you're trying to solve as a HR team? What is your talent management strategy? How are you actually? What is the goals or the objectives of the organization that you need to be able to support and achieve? And then work backwards from that. And that means first off, actually putting in some uh, standard but important HR practices. Like, do you have a good performance management like cadence? Are you collecting the right data? Do you know what skills are required for certain roles, et cetera, et cetera? If you reach for kind of just AI to kind of tell you these things, then it's probably just not going to be as effective as it could be, right? You have to avoid the garbage in, garbage out situation by doing the hard work first, and the machines aren't going to be able to kind of just take that for you. You have to be able to know what it is you're trying to achieve, uh, put in the right infrastructure first, and then you can start to think about all the cool, sexy stuff. So yeah.
Mhm. Feel like uh, I describe AI sometimes. It's like popcorn. There's like 10 popping up every day. So let's say we do the heavy work. Like, how do you know pick?
Yeah, so I think from like the recruitment side of things, or kind of succession, we actually have a lot of like data and literature that we can rely on. There's a whole industry of organizational industrial psychologists that are great thought partners here, right? Things that we've known to be true, like core concepts around, are the tools reliable and valid? Like that is, do they provide consistent insights across time, and do they actually predict performance? And do they have no adverse impact against protected groups? Those things have been rigorously tested, and standards that have been held, in the pre-AI world, and should continue to be so in this post-AI, or in this age of AI. And so they're kind of partnering with those types of experts can really help you vet tools, because even if you're using a survey or you're using scraping kind of digital footprints, those three core concepts of reliability, validity, and fairness like are universal in that respect. And so you should ask for evidence around those things. The same thing was like, the training data. Is the training data done on a diverse and representative sample of the people that you want to recruit into your
Right.
organization?
Yeah.
And if not, then the predictions may not be so valid, right? It's the same thing with traditional assessments. We look at benchmarks, we look at norms. AI algorithms and training data is kind of just comparable. So I think all that's to say is actually we know a lot about how to vet um, AI algorithms and AI-enabled tools within the HR space. It just requires us to kind of transpose some of these kind of core concepts or frameworks for decision making onto these new tools.
Final question here. Where could someone find you? Learn more about what um, Deeper Signals does. I think you and I are going to have another conversation at another time about
Yeah.
um, more about like your core expertise, which is around doing psychological assessments and that kind of thing. But where could they find you and Deeper
Yeah,
Signals?
absolutely. So my LinkedIn is possibly the best place to find me if you have questions and want to talk more. Otherwise, yeah, deepersignals.com will be the other good spot to find me and learn more about what my company does.
Well, thanks, Reese. I love that. I like the way you were able to cut through all the hype, but also the naysayers to find some middle, which is probably where the truth is going to lie. I'm thinking about assessing any AI tool we take on board from what you recommended at the end there around reliability, validity, and fairness. Um, but at this point, we've reached the end of the episode. Thanks for listening out there. We'll catch you next time when I talk with another amazing guest.